Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be discussing the NFC. We're previewing all 16 teams. We're going to start off with the NFC North, the Chicago Bears.
So really, I mean, when you look at it, Ryan, the Bears lost really no one. I mean, they lost Adrian Amos, which is going to be kind of... I mean,
it'll hit their secondary a little bit.
It hurts that it went to a division rival.
But they also replaced it with Clinton Dix, so it's not that bad of a loss.
If he can stay on the field.
That's true.
I mean, they pretty much traded him for Amos, even though they didn't trade. And they traded Jordan Howard to Philly, which makes Philly even stronger. But they replaced him with what's his name?
With their
Montgomery.
third-round pick, David Montgomery.
Mm-hmm. But, I mean, I can see them finishing decently, 10-6, 12-4. I mean, they're my pick to win the division. They're not my pick to win the NFC, but they're my pick for the division.
My biggest question mark with them is who's going to be kicking for them?
Well, more of the fact is that you've heard about Carly Lloyd, and
yeah, she kicked that 55-yard field goal. It's impressive.
I've been pretty much thinking, well, hey, who's the one team? Because they've been saying, oh, there's a team that's looking at her, and they're who I would first guess would be them.
Yeah.
So
I mean, they're gonna have a good return man for probably the first time since Devin Hester left them, and Cordell Patterson.
Yeah, but they can't take that away from Tariq Cohen. Patterson will go to the kickoff. Cohen's our punt returner.
Yeah, but it'll be a big boost for them, especially if they can work some screens in, just get the ball in Patterson's hand and let him do his magic.
I still don't believe in Trubisky, but he can lead them to the playoffs. That defense is going to have to win them games in the playoffs.
Well, I mean, when you have...
It showed they didn't last year when they got eliminated by Philly so quickly.
When you have one of the best defensive players in the game in Khalil Mack, I mean...
Yeah. If not the best, but I think Aaron Donald still takes that.
I totally agree. 10-6, anywhere from 10-6, 12-4.
I mean, that division's going to be tough anyways, aside from Detroit. But
speaking of that division, speaking of Detroit, let's move on to them. Really, they added Trey Flowers, which is going to be helpful.
Well, they're the Patriot North. They're the Patriots of the NFC. Tennessee takes that as the AFC team, but, I mean, it's pretty hard.
Everybody's trying to copy Patriots and what they're doing.
Well, I mean, you take their defensive coordinator away from them last year.
They also...
He's perceived to be on the hot seat, but when you get a stud defender in
Trey Flowers, yeah.
But you replace Ezekiel Ansah with him.
And then they bring in former wide receiver Dan Amendola, former quarterback in Justin Coleman, and then trying to recreate Rob Gronkowski in their draft pick of T.J. Hawkinson.
I was a little surprised that they went with him so early.
I was too.
But, I mean, he is a top 10 pick, but, I mean, they could have addressed a little bit more, like their safety position, releasing Glover Quinn. Well, he went to retirement, actually, but he's not... Hawkinson's going to be good, but a tight end in the top 10, you don't really hear of it. I mean, Gronk wasn't even a top 10 pick.
No.
He wasn't even a first-round pick. So... like, the best can fall. But, I mean, he was going to get picked, swooped up by somebody. If not them, then maybe the Broncos don't trade their 10th pick to Pittsburgh and they take him there.
Well, what's really confusing is how they draft Hawkinson so highly after signing Jesse James.
Yeah, but, I mean, being a Steeler fan myself, James is more of a red zone target. He's not a big play. I mean, he had a couple big plays, but he's more of those guys that's going to catch it and fall down. But Hawkinson seems, at least preseason-wise, he seems like he can do some yard after the catch.
And I mean, you also have stealing from the Packers and getting Mike Daniels after they released him.
I feel like that was more Daniels than the Lions just wanting to get back at his former team for cutting him because, I mean, he's been an all-pro, well, not an all-pro, Pro Bowl player a couple years. And
I mean, even though they made, a lot of moves this year, I still don't see them being a playoff team.
They can't.
Nowhere close to a playoff team.
I love Stafford, but they overpaid him. Ever since Calvin Johnson, he hasn't had
a true number
one receiver, and Marvin Jones isn't that. So
I see it 4-12.
Could they have went receiver, but there was no real receiver worth a top 10
Exactly.
pick. So, I mean, maybe Hawkinson can become that.
there's only like 2 or 3 wide receivers.
Marquise Brown was the first receiver, and
you had N'Keal Harry.
Less than 6 foot.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
They don't need that.
I mean, I only see like 4 and 12 or like 5 and 11.
I mean, Stafford will bring him, and he'll bring him back a few games. But
yeah, and I mean, Stafford's a great fantasy quarterback just because he racks up the yards.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's all he's going to be good for.
Yeah.
Bless his heart, bless his family, but he's not anything. He's not a playoff quarterback.
Let's move on to Green Bay, another very active team. Picking up Adrian Amos, Preston Smith, Za'Darius Smith, releasing Mike Daniels and Nick Perry. And then in their draft, I thought they had a pretty good draft, drafting Rashawn Gary, Darnell Savage, and then my personal favorite, Jay Sternberger. I think this tight end could really make a difference somewhere. And I mean, with working with Aaron Rodgers, I think he could actually be a guy that could put up maybe, first year, 50 catches, maybe 500-600 yards, maybe 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, but he's going to play behind Jimmy Graham. Because Jimmy
Graham has injury questions, though.
Right, but he's still Jimmy Graham. Like, he's not the Jimmy Graham of the past, but Rodgers is still going to want him on the field because he wants somebody proven. And, I mean, really, who doesn't say Rodgers has control of that team? Because what we didn't put in our little notes here is that they also have a first-year head coach in Matt LaFleur.
That's true.
The dude's probably just as old as Rodgers is, and Rodgers can just take him over and say, I mean, the guy never seemingly agreed with Mike McCarthy.
Yeah.
He never really did. They won a Super Bowl together, but he wasn't ever seeing eye to eye with him. Which, I mean, McCarthy, he won a Super Bowl, so he did what he had to do.
Yeah.
He's going to live life in retirement, whatever. But Rodgers, he has his team. They needed to get what they needed to get, and that's defense.
And they really beefed up their defense.
But
my biggest question is, who's going to be carrying the rock for them?
It's Aaron Jones or Jamal Williams. They have a committee. It's more of that because they've never, since Ryan Grant, honestly, with their Super Bowl year, they've never had that running back. Because Eddie Lacy was good
there, for a little bit.
He was good for a season.
Yeah.
If that. And then he started eating too many cheeseburgers. But
gained a lot of weight there.
Yeah, a lot. More like he turned into a defensive lineman. But the Packers haven't had a defense since the Super Bowl, and they got it. I mean, I didn't agree with Rashawn Gary at 12, but because, I mean, yeah, he was the number 1 recruit in his class, but he wasn't even the best player coming out of Michigan.
No, arguably Devin Bush or Chase Winovich was.
He wasn't even thought of as like that player, but yet he was picked in the first round because people liked him. I mean, he's big, he's fast, but they needed to replace whoever, Clay Matthews, and they got their sack getter. Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, I think this team's maybe like a 9-7 team.
It's Aaron Rodgers, so you can't ever
doubt.
Wild card team at best, because I think the Bears, our projection,
the Bears
might
have
run
taken
away. But Green Bay, this is going to be an exciting first game this Thursday, because if Green Bay somehow wins, and maybe I'll think differently of them, but they have Aaron Rodgers, so they're not going to be ever out of the equation.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, they didn't really do much this offseason. They had a lot of talks about potentially moving Kyle Rudolph. Ended up extending him.
They take Irv Smith in second round, and then they re-sign Kyle Rudolph.
Which makes no sense whatsoever.
And that just further proves what I'm concerned about their whole front office, because I have never been a Kirk Cousins fan.
Yeah.
Never.
And they paid him big money
3 years, $84 million for a guy. Now, what my biggest pet peeve about Kirk Cousins is, the Vikings made the NFC Championship game the year prior with Case Keenum.
Yeah.
Who no one really in the league believes he should be a starting quarterback.
Especially remember that miracle.
Yeah, they got lucky. Yeah, Drew Brees, the Saints should have advanced, but luck is on your side, and Case Keenum is a quarterback that can take you far, because that defense is barring elite, and you have a great run game. You have 2 elite wide receivers. One at least is elite. One might be borderline elite.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're supposed to be worth $84 million, how do you go from a 13-3 team, which I believe they were, but they were second seed because they traveled to Philly and got romped, to not even making the playoffs the next year?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't correlate. Kirk Cousins' career highlight is not on the field. It's him screaming, you like that, going back in the locker room.
Well, I mean, you also got to admit, though, like, that offensive line is just...
Which is what they addressed in the center.
Signing Josh Klein, that's really just a depth dude. He's really digressed over the years. And then drafting center Garrett Bradbury.
In the first round, but that's what they needed. Yeah. They needed line help, and they need a healthy Dalvin Cook, and from the preseason look, he looks pretty healthy.
Yeah, which will be tremendous
for them. But I still don't see them. I see them as the third place team in their division.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, they have arguably outside of, not trying to be a biased fan here, but my favorite defensive player outside of the Steelers is Harrison Smith. Mm-hmm. And, they have Xavier Rhodes. They were able to keep Anthony Barr somehow, which I don't know why he took less money, but you wanted to stay home. And Danielle Hunter and Everson Griffin are insane.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, this is only
it's a borderline playoff team.
500 team.
Because you need to change quarterbacks.
Of course.
You need. He is. I don't know what he's thinking.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on to the NFC East. Let's start off with Dallas. Beginning of the week, didn't know if Ezekiel Elliott will be here, and now today we got news that they're closing in on a deal.
Yeah, you don't know. Jerry Jones is full of himself. They're never going to win with him. The 90s was their... they had Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin. They had that team. Triplets, whatever. Are they trying to recreate it now? Maybe. I'm sorry. I'm not. I believe in Dak. I think the man deserves $20 million a year. He's not deserving of $40 million, which is what he's expecting. Yeah. Ezekiel Elliott is a real deal, but he just needs to man up and play.
Of course.
Not get offended by a little comment that your owner makes.
Yeah.
And, Amari Cooper is good. He went to Alabama, so he had to have been somewhat decent. And, I like the guy. He never progressed in Oakland because him and Derek Carr never connected, which maybe that's on him. Reason. Maybe that's on him. Maybe that's on Carr. But you never know. But from what he played in Dallas last year, he looked pretty good. But Jerry needs to figure out who he's going to pay.
And with this team, they really didn't make any off-season moves. No. Jason Witten coming back from retirement.
That was because he was absolutely god-awful in the booth.
Yeah.
So maybe people were blowing up his Twitter and saying, just go back to playing football.
Yeah.
You need to move on from this. Then this is not for you.
Nabbing Randall Cobb. It's not a bad move, but,
He was emotional. His better years behind him.
Oh, yeah, of course.
He's less than 6 foot receiver. Once you get into your 30s, you really, just receiver in general, unless you're Jerry Rice, your career pretty much slows down.
Yeah. This team...
if they get Elliott back week 1 and they hit the ground running...
Should be like an 11-5 team.
They should be a playoff team.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable in saying they're going to win the division because I like Philly, which we'll address later, but...
they're in a pretty weak division.
Oh, yeah.
But, speaking of weak division, we'll move into the New York Giants here.
Let me just address this. They made the dumbest move of the offseason.
Arguably the 2 dumbest moves of the offseason.
Well, we're not going to get there yet, but one is proven that it was a dumb move. You trade your franchise centerpiece, your face of your franchise.
Top 5 wide receiver in the whole
league.
Top
3, easily, probably, and Odell Beckham Jr., and you trade him to Cleveland. Granted, he is a diva. He's just like Antonio Brown, but you move him to so-called a place where he even himself said, this wasn't a business move. They wanted me to die here. They sent me here to die. Because Cleveland has long been regarded as
place to go where
the NFL graveyard.
Yeah.
For the past, at least this century, the first 2 decades of the century, they're the NFL graveyard. Mm-hmm. But, and Olivier Vernon, he's still consistent as much, so he's still going to be a quality starter for them.
I mean, they get back Jabril Peppers, who...
But, I mean...
Up and down, and Kevin Zeitler back.
He was a guy I loved coming out of the draft. Coming out of Michigan, he looked like a utility man, looked like he could play on both sides of the ball. His first 2 years in the league have been pretty...
Average.
At best. I mean, maybe he just went into a bad system.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think he really started on that team.
I mean, he looked kind of good in the preseason a little bit.
They shoved him into being a returner in Cleveland, so maybe the Giants can bring him back down to earth.
Yeah.
And just be like, hey, we need you to play safety. We need you to replace Landon Collins. And really, I mean, you need to be that hole in our defense because we gave up him. And that's another... So we completely forgot about that. They lost Landon Collins.
Yep.
They gave him up for nothing. They could have signed him...
To a division rival, too,
yes,
at that.
To the heated division rival.
Yeah.
Because, they signed Antoine Bethea, and they acquired Jabril, but neither one of those guys... Bethea, maybe in his prime, was somewhat close to Collins, but...
they're no...
Bethea's upper 30s,
comparison.
He's not going to be anything.
I mean, the draft, it was...
They had a good first round. It
was okay. A little head-scratching moves in drafting Daniel Jones at 6th overall, but he's had a good preseason.
When you get drafted to a team like New York, a big market like New York, you're going to have fans that... I mean, my God, the guy you're supposed to replace won 2 Super Bowls against arguably the greatest player that's ever walked the gridiron in Tom Brady. And you beat him in an undefeated season with a wild card team.
Yeah.
And you go in and do it again when he had Gronk and everything.
Yeah.
Now, granted, he got lucky on 2 plays. 2 incredibly
the helmet catch.
Lucky plays and the Mario Manningham sideline catch. But Eli's a great quarterback. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. But it's just New York has had a string of excellency that it's going to be hard to just step in there. Now, he's got a tailback with him for the future. And for at least 10 years, because the man doesn't look like he's going to...
He's a tank.
Barring a horrific injury, this man's going to be there for at least a decade with you.
Yeah.
And you're going to be there for probably 2 decades. Or a decade and a half at least.
I mean, and then getting Dexter Lawrence at 17th, not a bad move.
I didn't really care for him much. He's just a run stopper. That defense.
I mean, that defense is pretty bad.
But from that Clemson defense, he was the run stopper because Clelin Ferrell was the edge rusher.
Yeah.
And, oh my gosh, it was the third one. But don't mind that. He's a run-stopping defender.
Yeah.
Now, they did lose Damon Harrison last year. And so is he... I hate saying draft picks are supposed to be the replacement, except for quarterbacks. Because quarterbacks, you draft a quarterback to be the heir apparent to the one you have.
Yeah.
So that's just that. And DeAndre Baker, I like him.
Not a bad
but I don't he wasn't in my top 3 corners in the draft.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on to the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean...
Philly they gained their guy back in Deshaun Jackson, which I think Wentz needed
big play receiver.
Yeah. And I love the acquisition of Jordan Howard. Get their 3 down back.
Very underrated.
And like some other ones to mention, like Andrew Sendejo comes over from Minnesota. Is going to be a quality, rotation man at safety. Malik Jackson, Tim Jernigan, beef up your defensive line because you lose Michael Bennett, who was only there for a year, and you lose Chris Long to retirement.
Yeah. So I mean, you also have Fletcher Cox on that D line too.
But he's the anchor to that whole defense. The other 2 are edge rushers, so you get something there. And they addressed in the drafts the position that I believe they needed most, which was offensive tackle, because
age.
Jason Peters can't stay on the field, and that's the blindside tackle.
They're also getting older too.
Wentz, bless his heart, he's injury prone too.
Yeah. I mean, they had a good pickup in J.J. Arcega-Whiteside too.
I love that pick. I mean, they're a little loaded at receiver because they just gained Deshaun Jackson. They also have Aguilar and Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe they could have afforded to wait, but from his preseason, he looks like a big red zone threat, which
of course
Wentz could never have too much of.
And then let's move on to the Washington Redskins, who probably had one of the better drafts.
In my opinion, at least their first 2 picks, their first round was arguably the best.
Hands down.
I mean,
you get a guy that you were looking at trading up for.
When
just
there was
flipped to.
Yeah, there was regards and rumors that they could have moved up as far as third to pick him because Oakland didn't know what they were doing at 4, and I mean everybody knew Kyler was going 1, and people then regarded San Francisco as taking Bosa at 2.
Yeah.
So the top 2 picks were locked, but you didn't know how it was going to fall after that.
Yeah.
And the Jets. I mean, the Jets got what they needed at 3, but they were also saying, "Hey, we are willing to do this."
Yeah.
But then you see where that got their general manager, and he got fired, which we'll look at a later date. But when you get a man like Haskins, who arguably most people, and I agree, will probably be the best quarterback out of this draft class by far,
and just fall to your lap at 15.
And be able to get a man who should have been probably a top 10 pick at 26 in Montez Sweat.
Well, I mean, there were some heart conditions, a little bit of concerns.
Disregarding health issues, talent on the field, he's a top 10 pick in this draft.
Yeah. And then getting
Kelvin Harmon in the 6th round.
Yeah.
A man that should have been picked at as early as probably the 2nd round.
Yeah.
You get him on day 3, that's a steal of a pick. And not to mention Terry McLaurin, went to school with Haskins.
Yeah, exactly. And then sad news of Alex Smith, obviously.
I mean, the man's just like most horrific football injuries, he shouldn't play again.
No. But I mean, they get his potential replacement, Dwayne Haskins. They acquire Case Keenum. So they have a quarterback there. And then they steal Landon Collins from the Giants.
For 6 years. So he's going to get to play the Giants 12 times and beat up on them 12 times probably because he's going to stay.
He's going to be motivated.
Yeah. He's motivated this year.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, this division, it's going to be hard because they did acquire Case Keenum and he's going to be their starter. And I don't see them really playing Haskins early, which is sad.
Okay.
Because the guy needs it, but preseason...
He didn't look the greatest.
Preseason, his first touchdown was to a different team. Against Cleveland, but Cleveland wasn't playing their starters. And this was just... I can't see... I mean, sadness to say, but I see Philly winning this division unless... That is if Elliott plays week 1, I might change my
Dallas. I feel it's either Dallas or Philly.
They're it's gonna come down to week 17.
Yeah.
Whoever wins that division. I mean, I can see Washington being the 3rd team, maybe 8-8. If they play Haskins, they could probably finish 8-8. If they play McCoy and Case Keenum the whole year, they're not going to reach.
They're going to maybe be
6-10
then.
And the Giants, probably the same thing because I mean Eli's on his last leg, and I can't see them finishing any less than 6 wins. But if they replace him with Daniel Jones, they could sneak it to 8-8. But this division's either Philly's or Dallas's.
Yeah, there's no question about it. All right.
Washington got their guys on defense. So did the Giants, but that's for the future. Like Philly and Dallas. Dallas needs it because they have 3 guys that they have to pay, and they're probably only going to be able to pay 2 of them.
Yeah.
So one of them is going to walk. And what's scary is Jerry Jones might be crazy enough to let Zeke walk.
Yeah.
Because he's not...
But at the same time, though, running backs are a little bit replaceable because, you just really need to have a good offensive line to have a good
Which is what they
running
do.
Back. Yeah.
They made DeMarco Murray a Pro Bowler.
And not only that, but McFadden had over 1,000 yards.
Yeah. And both of them are out of the league right now.
Yeah.
And they played 4 seasons ago in Dallas.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the NFC South. I mean, this